Okay, so welcome everybody to our second group chat for our Book Booster program. So we've got a small group online at the moment, so it's a good opportunity to have some conversations. And hi Jackie, Jackie's just come in. So it was the point of tonight, or all these Monday night calls, is actually just to kind of catch up on how you're going with things. And after our last webinar, we talked about preparing some survey questions to do some research for your book, and quite a few people have posted their questions either onto the Facebook group or sent me emails, so that's excellent. So hopefully the feedback's, and I've noticed people giving each other feedback, which is really, really excellent, and I think that's going to be really helpful. So Facebook's the best place for that. If you want the group to give you feedback, then put your questions into Facebook. So I'll just sort of open up now for general conversation about, or questions about that survey research. It's kind of, I'm not a trained surveyor, as you can probably tell. If some of you have done a master's or PhD, you're probably much better at research than I am. But I guess just keeping the purpose in mind, it's a combination of surveying certain information, but also researching other people's ideas and perceptions of what you're going to be writing about, because you might have your own preconceptions of what other people will be thinking and feeling, and you really want to double check that that's accurate. So therefore you really need to be kind of interviewing them in some way. So I think there's a difference there between interviewing and surveying, and what you're doing is a pretty combination of both things. You kind of want to gather a bit of data, but you want to open people up to give you a broader conversation as well. So I'll just open up for general comments or whatever at this point. Hopefully you can all unmute yourselves. But actually, there is a button here, unmute everybody, so I'll do that. So you should all be unmuted. Okay.
So Bev, good evening, Dolores here. A quick question then about how many people would be an average amount to survey?
Yeah, it surprisingly doesn't have to be a huge amount.
Yeah.
You know, I'd say 20 or 30. I mean, you know, again, we're not doing statistical research that has to pass an academic sort of scrutiny. You're really testing out your ideas, and if you're coming up with responses you hadn't expected, then you probably would take that unexpected response, maybe research that a little bit further. I guess you're looking for threads, either confirmation of what you've already assumed to be true, and maybe discovering ideas or perceptions that you hadn't really thought of, and then investigating that further. Has anybody here got a research background in some shape or form? So I'm sure there will be in the group, there will be somebody that has.
I've done a master's, but it wasn't totally, it wasn't heavily research based.
Right, yeah. So did you have to do some research, some surveying research?
Mainly literature review, really.
Right, okay, yeah.
And Bev, how many questions?
Well, yeah, not too many. I think if you just think about yourself, you know, we're all happy to help with responses to surveys, but I think if we open it up and it just looks like it's going to take us half an hour, some people are happy to do that because they enjoy that. There might be other people that you get valuable information from, but they just think, oh, I'm just not going to give it half an hour. So I'd keep it a combination of sort of short responses to kind of get a bit of a profile of who it is, the data about the person that's doing the response, and then maybe a couple of multiple choice or tick boxes or whatever, and then a couple of open fields where you ask them to write more about their certain situation. I remember in yours, I think one of the questions we suggested in yours was to add to it was to ask if they ever felt they had been at a crossroad in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
that's an open field.
Yeah, yeah. And some people will give a brief answer to that, and other people might give you quite a long answer to that. But I think you need to have some questions where you're opening people up to, like that sort of interview question, like, tell me more about that.
Yeah.
And I mean, the survey also might just be the first step of it. You might get responses from people. And I think you should always ask a question, which I didn't put on that sheet actually. You could always ask the question at the bottom, would you mind if I contact you personally to follow up on your responses?
Good question. Yeah.
Because then if there's somebody that's responded and you think they'll be really valuable to talk to, then you've got that connection. But I think you should also offer people the option to say no to that. There shouldn't be a compulsory question, like your phone number and your email address should not be a compulsory question. Depending on, I think if you use Survey Monkey, I think they have to put, I think you'll get their email address anyway, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, you should ask permission to contact them. Yeah.
Dave, can you hear me?
Yes, Jackie.
So I wanted to ask two questions. The first one, I remember you said that even if you going to survey women, not to exclude the men. So like you could say to them, you know, if you've got a sister, wife, daughter, blah, blah, blah. Would you do a separate questionnaire? So send out two different questionnaires, one for the men, one for the women, or would you just encapsulate it all in the one?
Yeah, I think what my client did, I'm pretty sure she had a separate questionnaire for men. Some of the questions were identical, and there were just one or two questions which were more about their perception of women as leaders and how, you know, what they saw as a strong woman leader, or how they saw women hold themselves back from leadership. Yeah, so
okay.
Do two separate ones.
And then the other question, sorry, I haven't had a chance to read your email sent out, so you might have answered it. But I was just thinking of good places to post the survey. So I've got a small database that I send out my MailChimp to, so that would be like an obvious platform to send to them. Then the other one I was thinking of was putting on my Facebook business page, putting like a little questionnaire quiz there. Yep. And then I was thinking of doing another one on the little group that I'm part of, like-minded bitches drinking wine, posting it on that forum. Is there any view of yours in terms of overdoing it to too many, or how do you make a decision around where is a good niche? Because I think who you ask is either going to confirm or disconfirm your gut and your intuition and your instinct already. So I think what I'm a little bit nervous of is that I'm going to be posting in places where I'm going to get answers that I've already predicted, and necessarily soliciting completely different responses because I'm not moving in those forums.
Yeah. So have you got a clear profile of the kind of person that you expect to read your book?
Well, women that would be coming across unexpected, unanticipated crossroads and obstacles, changes in their life. But you see, this is what's interesting so I sent you my pain points, and it resonated with you. And then I sent it to my brand consultant who has never had children. And so, like one of the pain points was around going back to work after being at home with the children and struggling with that confidence issue. Another pain point was having to parent a very difficult, challenging child, whether it's learning difficulties or behavioral difficulties. And another pain point was dealing with a potentially terminally ill child and parenting them and still trying to manage a relationship. But she said when she came across those three, she just zoned out. And then, then I thought, okay, well, this is going to be quite challenging then in terms of, how I actually niche this. And I know you gave me a very good suggestion that, you make the first sort of 3 to 4 chapters generic around, resilience and change and crossroads for any person at any stage in their life. And then you have your big pain points that some would identify with some, but not would identify with all.
Yeah. I guess what you might find out in your research, if you put your survey out to a broad group of people, you might then find where the interest lies. And if the interest doesn't lie with people who maybe haven't had children, maybe that's maybe your niche will come out of your research, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that when I read and that's the feedback I gave, I think, is that you did have a broad, you had a lot of pain points. And they would be very different people that would connect, would not be one person that would connect with all of them. So you're probably still looking at maybe several ideas for the book, but so I think maybe your research will help you identify the best audience to start with, because I think that's what we all need to remember, is that we probably have got several books in us, and that you can write very similar content, but for different audiences. So you might do 2 or 3. You might end up doing 2 or 3 books. I mean, I use my book, Smart Women Published. I mean, I could do the same book for a general audience, or for some reason you probably wouldn't do one Smart Men Published. It's was obviously a deliberate choice to do it specifically for women. But the content wouldn't be very different if I just changed the title. So in your case, though, your content, you've got a lot of options for your content. You could cover a lot of different scenarios. So through your research, you might realise, well, I should only cover scenario A, B, and C, not D, E, and F, because that's 2 different audiences, 2 different readerships. Does that make sense? Yeah. I think maybe that could help. I think your research could help with that.
Yeah.
And that could be one of your questions in there. Would be, would you read a book about, which of these would you read a book about, or which of these would you choose a book to help you with? And you might have the scenarios, and you'll see which ones keep coming up. Yeah. And there might be something that you think people would want to read about, but it just might not be something that they would go to a book for. It might be something they would go to a psychologist for. You know what I mean? It's just, So I think that research is really important for you to do, just to make sure that you are when you start the planning and the writing, that you're on the right track, that you've got the right parameters.
So I think a big part of that's going to boil down to who you actually ask.
Yeah, but so I mean, you could do something like LinkedIn is a great place to put requests.
Survey.
What was that? Sorry? What was that?
Yeah, you see, in my head, I see 2 different types of books where I like. One of my favorite books is Enough Light for the Step I'm On, and basically it's different challenges that you would face, and one would be grief through to loss of a family member, one could be redundancy, all sorts of things. And you would only go to the chapter that resonated with you, and there would be chapters that you wouldn't maybe read in a way. I was sort of thinking of a book like that you would go to the chapter that works for you. There could be 2 or 3 chapters that work that
Yeah. And I guess that
in and out of.
Again, that could be part of your questions, and that might be the second level of question. Your first level of questions might be to get some, to get your responses in and look at them, and then the second level of question for those who said that they would be happy for you to follow up for a second round might be that sort of, would you be interested in, would you read a book that is set up in this way, where you've got content at the start for everybody and then chapters for individuals? Would that work for you?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
It could be a way of approaching it. Hi, Belinda. Hi from New Zealand.
Hi, Bev. How are you?
Good. We're just having a general chat about surveys. Have you done any studies about surveying and questioning techniques, that sort of thing?
No, but I found that very helpful, what you sent through to me. That's really, really helpful. I realise I've got to do a lot more research now.
Yeah, I think it's really critical. It's kind of it feels like you're not getting anywhere, but you actually are. You're just gathering some really, really important information. Yeah. Does anyone? I'll go to that document in a minute, but while we're just having a general chat, does anyone else want to jump in there? I'm getting Trish, you right with yours?
No, I'm all good. Thank you. I really love that document you sent through. So I really would love to. Yeah, I think that was so helpful.
Yeah. So as I said, because this is a beta course, I'm sort of realising myself, and that is the whole beta course. And again, if you decide to do something like this yourself with your content, I realised after I ran that webinar that I should have provided more information about surveys, because quite a few of you asked about it. So what I've sent you tonight will probably be incorporated earlier in the conversation, but and that's what in a beta group, this is what you're doing. So it's you're building things as you go, and it's just things I've gathered together. So there's a couple of articles. So I'm looking at that document I emailed to you earlier on. So at the top of that, there's some links off to articles. One of them is by SurveyMonkey, the first one. The second one comes from Constant Contact, which is actually an email service, like you can do newsletters, things using Constant Contact. And HubSpot is a blog service, I think. HubSpot's another one of those ones that you use. You can use it to store a database and communicate with your database. The one thing that I noticed that will come up, and you'll notice this too, so I mentioned it before, there's a difference between survey questions and interview questions. I think what you're trying to do is a combination of both. Survey questions, when you read the how to do a survey, will tell you not to use, or they'll tell you not to use very many open-ended questions. They'll tell you to use closed, like yes, no, blah, 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 because you're trying to gather facts, I suppose. Whereas interview questions, you're asking people to open up and have a conversation, give you more information. So when you're doing a survey, sort of cat's tail over there, was it? The kitty cats me too. When you're doing, always give an introduction. I know in SurveyMonkey there's a section at the top that you fill out, and you could explain the purpose of your survey, and it sort of steps you through those things when you're filling it out. Has anyone used SurveyMonkey before?
Yeah.
So they've all got plenty
I've been on the receiving end.
Yeah, they've got good instructions. They'll sort of give you a bit of a template. This is what you do here and this is what you do there. But it's always good to tell people who you are. It kind of give you credibility. Look, I'm a so-and-so and I specialise in doing this and this, and helping people who are whatever. So give them the background, the context, your credibility, the background of the research. I'm currently writing a book about X, and I'm surveying opinions on topics related to my content to help me in my research. So really, just be really open about what you're doing. I would appreciate your time, whatever. So just put it in your own words and your own tones. So just some sample questions. I think you all always need to get some feedback first up about a bit of a profile of the person who's responding, and it's also good to open up with questions like that because they're obviously easy to answer. Someone just goes tick, 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 and they're into the survey. And you may not need to know some of those. Some of them you will need to know, some of them you won't need to know. That's really up to you. And the 5 and 6, there are 5 other socioeconomic factors like race, ethnicity, that's the word, education. I mean, again, if that's important to you, then you ask about it. If you don't feel like it is, then you don't need to ask about it. Psychographics, which are more like attitudes and opinions, interests, hobbies, that sort of thing. Again, if that's relevant, then you'd ask about that. So looking at B there, ask about the respondent's experience relevant to your survey topic. Yeah, so that's has to come up early on, I think. You've already told them what you're surveying about. You've given them a background, so you just ask them then, what's their experience with that. So I know with Suzanne Swan, who does yoga with pregnant mums, she put her survey questions onto the Facebook group. She got some good responses from the group. Thank you very much. And also from Chris, who's a GP down in South Australia. So Chris gave us some good feedback there. It's just important not to make assumptions that people already know stuff. So if you start looking at, you're probably doing this, look at each other's questions and other people's responses to the questions, and that will help you. we can be each other's first respondents. You might have the survey done up. Well, send it to us, or send it to me and I'll send it to the group, whatever you like, to do a test run and give each other feedback about all that. Question 6 didn't really quite work. To really use us. And some of us will be part of your group anyway that you want feedback from, or you want survey results from. So use us as your testing group if you wish. So then what have I got? Let's see. I'm looking see here are a couple of sample survey questions. They're the ones that I put up on Facebook group, I think, the other day. These were questions that came from one of my clients' surveys about women in leadership.
Oh, good.
Hi, I'm back. What happened there?
Yeah.
You all still there?
Yep, we're here.
Oh, amazing, we're all here. What happened? I don't know what happened then. So going back to that document, then the next page of that, I've just copied it. Again, in Facebook, I did put a link to an article that I found, and I've just copied that article and put it into that Word document, which you might find easier. It's quite a good document. Again, this lady, Linda, whatever, she's a blogger and she's writing an article for other bloggers or writers to help them to research what their readers want. So it's actually very similar to what you're doing. You're researching to know what your readers want. And she's obviously talking probably to people who may already have a bit of a database and a bit of a small amount of people reading their blog. So she's showing you how to survey them and build on those ideas that you get in your responses. But you can definitely use the same sorts of techniques that she's suggested here. So on tip 1, go broad, not narrow. That's, like in her case, she's saying here's the secret known by the best interviewers, which is to avoid asking yes and no questions unless you really, really have to.
There she is.
That's been my internet must be just dropping in and out.
If you've gone.
Okay, I'm coming back. I'm on my way. I'm coming. Oh, gosh.
There you are.
Yeah.
We keep losing you, Ben.
Yeah,
You keep cutting out. It says that the bandwidth is low or something.
Yeah, this be the time of night. Usually my internet's great. What I can do, I might get lost. If all else fails, I can run this off my phone, but I'm not sure what happens when I change from my PC to my phone, whether it will drop out and hopefully come back on. I can see it's very low, it's very weak. But at least it keeps coming back, so that's a good thing. Okay,
Have
so
you got
go back
anything
to that
else
document.
playing in the background with
What's
like
that?
your mail or anything else?
No, I don't have anything else on, I don't think. Not just got us open. That's closed. That's closed. I might just text. I'll just text my partner who's in the other room. Make sure he's not online. Just bear with me, sorry. Text. Yeah. Okay, so I said that. All right, we'll keep going. Go broad, not narrow. Yeah, so as I said earlier, just look at your questions on your survey, as a combination of the yes, no, short answer and some long answer. And I think people are very comfortable with that combination. If you ask people to write you lots of long answer questions, they might get a bit tired of that. If you're asking repetitive questions or questions that might mean that they actually have to repeat information in several questions, then they probably won't be too happy about that. So just like I said, using us as your test run is probably a great idea. Force them to prioritise. That was a good point there. her point, which I sort of highlighted, is that she's found that if she asks people a multiple choice where they can actually, in a multiple choice, they can actually tick more than one thing, they will tick more than one thing because they don't have to decide. So they say, oh, yeah, like that, that and that. Whereas if you said, well, which of the following is more important to you, like they can only choose one. They've got to think about it, and then you'll get a better response, a better indication of the right response. So I think that's really important. But so in SurveyMonkey, you can shape your questions, set your questions up in all sorts of different ways. You can get them to number priorities from 1 to 5, or multiple choice choose 1, or multiple choice choose more than 1. There's all sorts of ways you can do that. So just think about that. You know, do you really need people to prioritise one of several choices rather than a few? Because what she was trying to find out in her case, and I think this is really relevant to you, is that of all the things that she could blog about, which were the ones, she wanted to know which were the ones that were most popular or most important to her readers. So it wasn't helpful to get lots of broad responses because she still didn't know where to start. So when she asked, well, what's your priority, then she got some responses she could. And then tip 3, then at some point turn them loose. In other words, give them some opportunity to sort of give you open-ended responses where they can tell you what they think, tell you what their greatest fears are, tell you what their questions are, their anxieties, what they're looking for, tell you what they're really looking for, their ideal scenario, the ideal solution. You could ask people that sort of question. What do you feel would be your ideal? Yeah.
Disappeared.
There she is. Back.
I'm just glad it keeps coming back, I can tell you. Yeah, so you can ask them, if that works for you, you could ask them what their ideal situation is, what the difficult situation is, what their perfect solution might look like, or what they would like to see happen, or what they'd like to see available to them to help them create whatever their ideal situation is. And some questions there. What's your biggest challenge? That's obviously a really important thing that you need to be asking. What level are you at? Belinda, you sent me, I think that's the sort of response I gave to you, wasn't it? That you sent me that your sample questions, and it was one thing I thought you could ask is that, so what level are your readers at with numerology? Are they just total beginners, or they know a little bit, or they know this much? You could get people to grade themselves with their level of knowledge in certain things. Do they see themselves as a total beginner?
It's hard to hear, Bev. You keep cutting out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I've lost you.
Back again? Am I back again?
You're back again.
Look, what I'm going to do, I'm going to try my phone. So if you just bear with me, if I have to, I'll dial back in again. If I just totally disappear, what I'm going to try and do is just change my internet over to my phone. So let's just see how I go. Mobile hotspot. Mobile hotspot on. Okay, it's on. Probably got enough energy in my phone to get me through the session. Come on. We take technology for granted, but it's pretty amazing, really, isn't it?
It's frustrating, technology.
Yeah.
Fabulous when it works.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's not picking it up. Here we go. Not that one. That one. So I am connected, I do believe. Yay!
No, that sounds
that's
better.
That's better.
Yeah, I've transferred from one to the other.
That sounds better.
Great. Okay. All good. Okay. So I was looking at question 2. What level are you at with? Yeah. So just use these things if they're relevant to you, and have a read through that document, obviously, when you've got time. But it might be important to know.
Actually, I quite like that idea. And that idea in the document about the offering a reward. You know, you could offer a reward to entice people to answer your questions. And maybe, you know, that reward could be a copy of the book or something, some reward.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, for sure. And, you know, think about what you're doing. You might already have some resources or some expertise or coaching time or, you know, whatever. It could be a 10-minute phone call with somebody, a kind of a discovery call or something. It could be lots of different things.
Yeah.
So question 3, what's missing out there? So again, that's a good question for you. It's similar to what we talked about before. Like if you had a book available to you when you were in a crisis, what would that book have helped you with? So what product or service do you wish someone would create? So that's where you might pick up some ideas that you hadn't really thought of, you know, things that you could add to your book that you might not have even thought of. And with your book, you can have a book that's not just pure text. So you can have your text, your content, but you can also be adding in extra resources. Now, ideally with your book, if you can create reasons in your book for people to go to your website, then that's the ideal situation. So, you know, if somebody says, oh, I wish I had a checklist for what to put on my book cover, or I wish I had a checklist about this, or I wish I had a template that would help me write a survey or whatever, you know, then those are the resources you would create and put them on your book, on your website. And in your book, you talk a little bit about it and you say, well, go to my website, blah, 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 to find the resources. So, so look out for those sorts of ideas as well as you're talking to people. Question 4, how do you prefer to learn? I think that, again, that's relevant.
Right.
Yeah, you know, if it's relevant, use it. If it's not, then that's fine. Whatever. But you might get ideas again from that for ideas for webinars. So for webinars, for example, someone might say, "Well, I really love this to find this information, but I'm not really into reading books so much. But if it was a webinar online or whatever, then I'd love to find it." So you might get some ideas for add-ons that you can deliver in some way, shape or form. Audiobooks are really big. So one of the things in brackets there is listening. So audiobooks are really big business these days and increasingly popular. I guess when you think about the popularity of podcasts, well, really that's an audiobook's like a podcast. So, but you kind of got to write the book first. But you could do the audio. You could do the audio podcasty things first and then turn them into your book. So there's all sorts of ways of doing this.
Yeah.
Next page, then, how to make sure everyone knows about your surveys. Well, that's just giving you some ideas for spreading your survey around. If you do put something on, say if you were to put a comment in LinkedIn, you just would be really clear in the little introductory paragraph in LinkedIn on who the survey's for, and then people will kind of filter themselves. Some people will click through, some people, obviously, as long as you just make it really clear who it's for. It's sort of a bit of a profile of who you're asking to complete the survey. But, again, depending on what it's for. So I'm just thinking of Suzanne with her business for yoga for pregnant mums. So when you think about it, I mean, LinkedIn's a professional tool, networking tool, but probably many of Suzanne's clients, maybe young professional women who've got the money to pay for a yoga program while they're pregnant and who really do want to do this thing really well, and they want, they want to gain information, they can pay for information, they'll make the time to do it. So even though it might not seem like a yoga baby post on LinkedIn is the right place, it may actually be the right place to find the kind of women that she wants to find. Yeah. And people on LinkedIn get a bit precious about this is LinkedIn's a professional network that doesn't belong on LinkedIn. I don't know if you've seen those sort of comments, but probably less so. I'm starting to see a lot of variety of posts on LinkedIn, but as long as they connect back to some sort of professional theme in some way, I think that people are pretty accepting of them. Okay, and then some ways of getting responses where people have to do it. So yeah, offer a goodie, appeal to their better side. Well, that's really what most of us do with surveys, appeal to their better side. I highlighted that little caveat there. I think that's really important to see. So I'm looking at page 4 there of that document. I highlighted that caveat. Your reason for the survey better be a good one. Running a survey because you want to figure out how to attract more advertisers or sell more books or generally make more money isn't going to convince anyone to help you. When you take a poll, it needs to be because you want to help your readers. When you take a poll, when you create a survey, it needs to be because you want to help your readers. So that's, you have to really, and that would be part of your introduction, so people will see that early on. Tactic, give them a voice, keep it short, give them a deadline. I think that's a really important one, give it a deadline. If you post a survey somewhere, you need to tell people that, or if you might email, if you've got, can email the links, you might email it to a lot of contacts you've got. So in the email, it should be, you need to tell people the link's live for the next 3 days or something like that. And then if we say 5 days, say the link's live for 5 days, I'd love to get a response within 5 days. Day 4, send it again on day 4, because, we're all busy. We'll see it first day, we'll think, yeah, I'm going to do that. And then 4 days later, it's kind of disappeared in our email inbox and can't find it. So if the reminder comes in day 4, one more, I've got 24 hours, still love to get your response. Yeah, I'll do that. And even, if you're selling tickets to events, this is what you have to do, don't you? You've got to tell everybody weeks ahead, tell them again a week before, a day before, even a couple of hours before. And people will buy tickets right at the last minute because they have every intention of doing so. They just don't get around to doing it. So it's a bit like that with surveys. So don't feel bad about reminding people that the survey's there and you still would love their help. And then some good information about what to do with all the data that you collect. You're looking for patterns, looking for multiples. In other words, if look for anything that's got more ticks than other things, that's pretty self-evident. Mix and match results. I haven't actually read this very closely at the end, but one thing I didn't understand, number 3, I thought that was really a good one there. Don't ignore the outliers. So you might find that you've got a question with 10 people have grouped together with a certain response, and there might be 1 or 2 with a different response. In other words, the outliers, have a look at what they say too, because sometimes they've got really, really good ideas that the majority haven't thought of, because sometimes the outliers are the ones with the really great ideas. They're not kind of part of the general massive grouping. So look to see what these people are saying as well, and in that you might get some ideas for things, and then you can always go back to the other group later and just double check whether that great idea is a possible idea. And again, it might not be something you actually incorporate in your book. It might be a great idea for an extra something you can do to add to your book, or as an extra service or product or program that you can do as well to the same audience. So the surveys actually you can get a lot from them, and you'll also get language that you can use. So if somebody's describing the problem or how they've struggled with whatever it is that you are helping people with, you'll get some phrases and terms and words in there that you can use and maybe able to quote people somewhere in your website, your marketing, in your book or whatever. So you get great value from them. Keep an open mind. In other words, just be open to new things. That's the whole point of a survey. And I think, as we said, don't assume you know exactly what everybody wants. Because we've all got our own perception of the area that we deal with, and if you've been doing it a while, you'll have a really good understanding of lots of different attitudes and opinions about your area of expertise, but there may be things that new that come up that you can be open to investigating further. All right, so hopefully that there's a bit more on that survey document, but that's all there. I'm just looking towards the end of it. One thing I did not put on that form, which we spoke about early on tonight, now I've got to remember what it was. Ask at the end of your survey for permission to contact. So those of you that came in late, ask at the end of your survey if they would be happy for you to contact them if you want to follow up. It's always nice as well, just a general thank you to people for doing it. So once you've closed the survey, you can, if you use SurveyMonkey, you can close the survey, you can extract all the data out of SurveyMonkey. You can just build up an email list of everyone who's responded, and you can respond to them as a thank you and sorts of things.
That's good.
Okay. So any other questions about surveys while we're still looking at? It is such a really critical part of what you're doing, and I mean, you can extend the survey not to be more than just about your book. Like if you're starting something new in your business, or you could add some questions in about your business as well. Doesn't have to just be about the book. It might be about your book and other things to do with your business that you could add into the survey. So if you're going to do it anyway, you could find out other things that could be useful in other parts of your business as well. But you just wouldn't want to get too long so that it's too much.
Bev, I'm actually thinking about interviewing rather than doing the survey.
Yeah.
Because I want to interview nurses, and I feel like I'm really having that conversation, and then to gift them a book, and so that's what I had that in my mind.
Yeah. So that's going to take you time, and it's fine if you just realise that that'll take you time, and then you've got to find a way of collating all that information that you gather, and you can keep it really simple. Like it doesn't have to be a complicated exercise. No. It's got to be as complicated as you make it, or as streamlined and as simple as you make it. That's fine. And so you do it, talk to them by phone or by like we are doing on
that's right.
Zoom call or something. Yeah. And a bit, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who they're not so good at explaining something in words on a survey form, whereas if you had a conversation with them, you'd find out so much more. So maybe you could do a combination of both, or like I said, in the survey forms, you might just pick up that there's of the 20 surveys, there might be 5 that you really want to follow up on, and then you would do the one-to-one contact. Like even that's going to tell even that sort of number will give you so much valuable information. Would be really helpful, because like Dolores, in your case, if you're specifically looking for people who've been at a crossroad before to do your research, because that's what you're wanting. You need to find people who've experienced it in the past for the research, because if someone hasn't experienced it, they've got nothing to tell you. So is that right? So you kind of need the research to be based on people who've experienced all of those emotions in order to write a book to help other people through it. Is that right? Am I wrong?
Yeah.
That's
Who's been there before, but those crossroads in time come up often. And so it's not just once that we're at a turning point or a crossroads. So it's then from them looking at what helped them, because that's the area that I'm focusing on, is what helps you actually navigate through.
So you're needing to find people.
So different scenario, going to look at the strategies and tips that help you out of it, or when you're sitting at a crossroads. Cool.
Okay. Thank you. Any other thing to cover that? I just wanted to talk a little bit about the pain to gain concept that I talked about in the webinar. Because that was the other thing I thought about later after the webinar, was whether or not that was clear. I think in the point that we're at with the program, by talking about a path, your book taking people on a path from pain to gain, at this point in the program, it's really just to start thinking about what that would look like. You don't have to zero in and start constructing chapters at this point, because, I mean, that's obviously the next step, but just at this point, I wasn't sure if I was clear enough about just to start thinking about that concept. Is there anyone on the call that doesn't work for what they're trying to do? That idea that when someone picks up your book, they're going to pick it up because they're in either a state of confusion or a state of pain. I'll use the word pain, and they want help with something, and through your book you'll be taking them to a solution of some kind. Does that apply to everybody?
Yeah.
Belinda, that applies to you, doesn't it?
Yes, I think it does. Yeah, I think, someone might be needing to, find a new way of taking a person, reading a person, and that's giving them some pain. So they're searching for a solution, and that can help.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, cool. So, so we'll be spending more time on that in the next webinar about how to change or turn that sort of concept into something that's tangible that you can work with when you're putting your book structure together. So, you comfortable with that? So, where we are with that idea, any questions about that pain to gain concept?
Yeah, I had a question, Bev. I thought it was interesting, when you asked us about mapping the pain path and prize, because for me, the mapping of the path seemed to determine the chapters.
Okay. Yeah, that's what it should do.
Yeah, that's the path. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's.
Which then informs the chapter.
Yeah, no, that's good, because that's probably most of the books that we work on in the group will kind of fit that or work. That's really what the shape of the book will be. That's a pain to gain. Sometimes it's not. Like someone might be writing a non-fiction book that's a memoir. If in that case, it may not feel. But I mean, even in a memoir, that's what you're talking about yourself, isn't it? You open a memoir with the state that you're in, where things are not going well, or they went wrong, whatever. So it's going to be pain to an outcome which is going to be a positive. So really your own memoir is that. But if you're writing a memoir to then teach or to speak to other people to help them through that same sort of situation, you're doing that for them as well. So, well, in my story, I went from here to here.
Yeah.
So if you learn from my story, it will help you go from A to B as well. So, it's a good way to think about it. And then when you decide where to start your book, you might decide not to start your book with a state of pain, but that's when you start to drill down about the structure of your book, where you get a bit more creative about how you put it all together. But that's really the overarching purpose of your book.
Sorry.
No, you're right.
That's my son.
Kind of like the framework of the hero's journey, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. Yeah, hero's journey. There's a couple of more steps in there, isn't there? There's sort of things going okay, then they go bad, then they come back up.
Okay, won't be long.
There's obstacle, overcoming the obstacle.
Okay, right.
It's very similar to that. I think I referred to it in my book, and I know it will come up in one of our webinars. I think I've got the structure of a book about, it's actually a career coaching book, really. And the author kept the structure of her book really simple. Like, where are you now? Where do you want to be? How can I help get you there? And, just really, that's kind of your typical coaching structure, isn't it? What's happening with you now? Where do you want to go? How can I help you get there? So that's how she wrote her book. That's what she's called the part 1. Where are you now? Part 2. Where do you want to be? Part 3. How will we get you there? It's easy, and the good part about that is that for a reader, it's just very clear. If you pick that up, if you're looking for career direction, you pick that up picked the book up, flipped to the contents page, and you saw that structure. It's like, yep, this will work for me. It just makes sense. We don't have to. I think that's what I like about non-fiction books is you don't have to. You have to be creative, but it's still need a fair bit of logic in there. If you get too disruptive about how things are put together, it's like going to see a movie which has been might be a very arty movie, but you kind of don't really know what's going on because they take you all over the shop and you're not sure which decade you're meant to be in. And after a while, your brain just gets really tired. Whereas, you go to see a movie that's just beautifully constructed, just takes you through on a beautiful path. And it's not going to be complicated, or it's not going to be taxing your logic too much. It's like, yeah, I know what's going on. I can follow it. I'm enjoying it. And that's really what you're aiming to create. Okay. Anything else at this point we can have a chat about? We don't have to go the full hour if everyone's happy with what we've covered off. So you're all still feeling inspired by this thing? You can do this thing, this book?
Yep. It's clearer now.
Yeah.
It's clearer.
Oh, good. Yeah. But the whole idea of writing a book, you haven't. Has anyone encountered those doubts that we spoke about last time? That sort of.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. Let's talk about them. What do yours look like?
Well, for me, it was sort of, who am I going to upset by writing this? But
Okay. All right. So you obviously know the answer to that, do you?
yeah, well, shucks. Just have to roll with it. But I have to look at who am I going to help by writing this.
Yes. Bigger
They can
purpose.
choose to read or not. Yeah.
Much bigger purpose to it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
On that note, Bev, do you run the risk of getting yourself into trouble if you start stepping into territory whereby potentially qualified experts would say you have no right to comment on that or have an opinion on that?
I think you're right. You have a right to have an opinion.
Yeah.
And you're only talking about your own experience and what you found, I assume, and what worked for you and how it's going to help someone else. That was where I'm coming from. I know I'm going to probably rock the boat a little bit, but I mean, the boat they wanted me on was taking me down the wrong river.
Yeah. I think you just be really careful not to you house it as an opinion, or you share it as somebody else's opinion, or you quote another source. You just be really careful of it. And also a good editor, that's what they look out for as well. That's part of their training as an editor, is to say, oh, hang on a minute, you really need to rephrase that because you're sort of stepping over the boundary with in some area of knowledge. I know in my book I part of my book is questioning that sometimes a degree may not be the answer to someone's career. And I'm sure I haven't received anything negative about that, but probably I will one day. But I really tried to put that in perspective. I can really kind of kept saying, well, I'm not saying it all the time and just saying occasionally. And but then I had found some research about that same thing, about the value of an MBA. Somebody else has built a whole career around helping people find career direction without degrees. So I kind of brought in that information as well, just to kind of back up a little bit on what I was saying. And my own experience with that girl at a seminar, which is in the book, the girl that said, I can't afford to do my master's, but I can do this, I can write writing a book. Whether or not she did, but my sister had a good response. So just really, and when you're writing, you'll go through it again and again. You won't just write it and then send it off. You'll write it and you'll be going back through it. You'll be going through that book so many times that you'll be so sick of it by the end of it. So put it in and then kind of defend your stance a little bit, or explain why you have that stance. Quote other sources or resources if you can. Find some real life examples. Find somebody else to comment about it. Find an expert to comment about it.
Mm.
The good thing about writing a book is it really enables you to reach out to people anywhere in the world, and sort of, you might be writing about an area where you know there's somebody on the other side of the world who's an expert in that field, and you can reach out to them. And on LinkedIn's a wonderful place for that. And so writing this, I really value comment. And it might be just that you've seen something on their website that you'd like to use, ask permission to use it, and then straight away you've made a connection with that person, and you never know where those sorts of connections will lead to.
Yeah.
And it does open a lot of doors. Yeah.
Mm. I mean, I think if you can work on the premise with compassion and it's heartfelt, that you're giving hope.
Mm.
Because this is why people generally reach out to a book, is to find answer to, they want hope. They're looking for hope all the time.
Yeah.
Eternally hope. And if you can let them know that there is an answer, well, this is the answer for me, it's obviously worked.
Yeah. Yeah. I think,
yeah.
that hope, with that very first little exercise we did about those 4 things in that first webinar, 4 things that a book can do, and hope. I think hope is the one that I don't think I actually asked everyone's feedback on that. There was information, inspiration, hope, and I forget the other one. It was in webinar 1, and I just assumed most of you would write hope as the number 1. Was that? Do you remember that?
Yeah. No.
I do now. Yeah.
Yeah. Hope and inspiration.
Hope is very important.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll find it. I remember it. Yeah.
It's a weak one.
It'll be in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's in there. It's in there.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It will be.
you would have written it down. I think it's really good. It's important to keep reminding yourself. So that's really what you're providing. So, and a good, if you just think back at, I'm sure you could all answer this. If you think back, can you name a book that gave you hope in a time when you really needed hope? Do you all have a book like that in your life?
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Dolores, what was
Not for
yours?
that particular problem. That's why I'm writing this book.
Okay, yeah. Dolores, what do you remember?
It was Mal McKissick, Managing Grief.
Yeah.
Just steps to make it Mal McKissick. And it's only a small little book, but it was profound.
Yeah. Anyone else? Book that's in your past that's been really pivotal for you?
Have a look, I think. I've
Mine
read so
was
many.
by Peter Levine, Waking the Tiger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was at the beginning of my own trauma recovery, and I didn't even realise I had so much trauma until I read his book and went, oh my God, things just started to click in, and I went, oh my God, yeah. So, yeah.
And is that why it's called Waking? I don't know the book. Is that why it's called Waking the Tiger?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think so. I actually don't remember a lot of the book. I remember one quote. He said, trauma is a fact of life, however, it doesn't have to be a life sentence. And when I read that was the hope part for me, like, oh my gosh, I don't have to keep doing what I'm doing. Okay.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep. And then steps to help you. Is that what that book also?
Well, I was doing my master's. Okay. Well, I guess it did, but I don't remember that. But I was in my master's, and we had I did over 80 hours of my own personal therapy during that master's, so significant work. Yeah. But it was like a real. It was what it did. It just helped me to understand so much, and then it would just helped me on the journey.
Yeah. See? If someone can say that about your book one day, it's pretty awesome, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, just the clarity. Yeah.
I think, most of us want our life to get simpler and easier. I don't know about you, but I think maybe there's in our life, like when we're young, we may not say that's what we want. Okay, that's it. Now, simpler, easier.
I do now, that's for sure. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. But, and I think I'd probably more so for young people, because their life is way more complicated than ours was ever.
I think so. I think they're challenged a lot more. They don't know it yet.
Yeah.
I think each generation says that.
Yeah. It's almost like time is sped up and everyone's busier now than they were years ago, isn't it? We're all flat out busy, even our children, and it's like time's sped up. That's what I find.
I just feel there are more distractions for kids. That's why they're busier. It's become more complicated.
Yeah. It's interesting. It just reminded me, if you're writing a book, and I think I put this in my book too, because I used to be a high school teacher and I worked for a little bit in Education Centre for Kids at Risk. I remember going to a conference about educational theory about helping kids at risk. There was not one teenager at risk who spoke at that conference, and I thought, why aren't we listening to these kids? Where are they? They weren't represented there. So I think the same thing applies to your book. If you're writing about or writing to or about a certain audience, that's what you've got to do, that survey, that research. You've got to talk to them. You've got to just you've got to be their voice, find out what they think, what they say, what they need. Okay, so I sent an email about, most of you responded, so in 2 weeks' time, I'll do the call on the Tuesday. And is anyone else in Brisbane going to come to that other PR event? Did anyone buy a ticket? Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, my ticket, I'll be there. Oh, that's good. Yeah. So otherwise we'll catch up with you on this call on the Tuesday night. And also this Friday, we'll do a webinar on this Friday. Okay.
Friday morning. Good. Looking forward
Thanks,
to it.
everyone. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Bye.